Set deep in a forest, a man suddenly wakes up buried beneath the ground. He is terrified, completely panicked, with no idea what happened or who buried him alive. After finding a phone in his pocket, he quickly calls the police for help. But when they ask for his name, he freezes, realizing he cannot remember who he is. Overwhelmed and confused, he runs aimlessly through the forest, shouting for help. Not long after, he comes across a small vacation cabin. A car is parked outside, suggesting someone might be there. Without hesitation, he knocks on the door, hoping for help. But when no one answers, he slowly steps inside and finds the door unlocked. Inside, something feels off. A handy cam is connected to a TV, with a message instructing him to press play. The moment he does, he is horrified. The footage shows a mysterious psychopath, a killer, brutally attacking a pregnant woman. Then, without realizing it at first, he notices the woman's body lying nearby. Panic takes over as he searches for car keys, but when he cannot find them, he flees back into the forest before the killer can return. After running a long distance, he hides behind a rock, hoping he is not being followed. That is when he realizes there is a wallet in his back pocket. Checking his ID, he finally learns his name is John Evans. Inside, he also finds a photo of a woman holding 2 teenage children. On the back of the photo, there is a message saying they love him. The realization hits hard. The woman in the video was his wife. John is overwhelmed with grief, knowing she has been killed while his 2 children are missing somewhere in the forest. This is ritual. When John wakes up later, it is already night. He vomits repeatedly, slaps his own head, even bangs it against a tree, desperately trying to remember what happened. Still lost, he continues wandering through the forest until he finds an old warehouse. Carefully, he approaches while scanning his surroundings, worried the killer might be nearby. He throws stones at the door a few times, testing if anyone is inside. When there is no response, he finally gathers the courage to enter, using an old lamp to light his way. Suddenly, a figure startles him, but it turns out to be nothing more than a mannequin. Relief does not last long. Soon he hears footsteps outside. He quickly locks the door. The killer has arrived and begins forcing his way in. With no other option, John hides inside a wooden crate. Moments later, the killer repeatedly stabs into the crate with a knife. Then, without hesitation, he sets it on fire, trapping John inside. Desperate, John manages to break free from the crate. But with the warehouse door locked and the fire spreading fast, he has no choice but to dig through the ground beneath the wall, escaping just before the flames consume everything. After hiding behind a rock for a while, John decides to make his way out of the forest and find the main road. He begins marking trees along the way so he will not get lost. Still, he stays alert after hearing distant noises. The moment he spots the killer carrying a machete, he immediately runs for his life. Once he finds another place to hide, John looks at his family photo, wondering where his 2 children could be. Meanwhile, his children are still alive somewhere in the forest. The girl had earlier returned to the cabin and found some bread in the car, which she gives to her younger brother. The boy is extremely thirsty after hours without water. The girl tries to calm him down and decides they will continue searching for their father in the morning. After taking a short rest, John chooses to return to the cabin, hoping his children might be there. But he finds no one. Instead, he is devastated to see his wife's body. Overcome with guilt, he apologizes and gently lays her body on the sofa. He then watches several family recordings, moments from their life at home and their arrival at the cabin. One video shows John filming himself, explaining that he, his wife, and their children came to this remote forest cabin for a quiet getaway. The footage suddenly cuts when a guest arrives and his wife opens the door. It continues with the killer brutally murdering her. At one point, John suddenly sees his wife's body move, but it turns out to be nothing more than a hallucination. As he turns off the music from a nearby clock, he notices the killer in the distance, now armed with a crossbow. John quickly grabs the machete left behind at the cabin. The killer continues hunting him, firing arrows, and one of them strikes John in his left arm. Unable to pull the arrow out, John forces it through his arm to break the tip, then pulls it out while enduring the pain. After wrapping the wound with cloth, he sets up a trap. Elsewhere, the girl and the boy continue wandering through the forest, searching for their father. The boy begins to lose hope, exhausted by the endless terrain. The girl is forced to leave him behind so he will not slow her down, giving him a knife to protect himself. Determined, John shouts to lure the killer into his trap. When he hears approaching footsteps, he carefully guides them toward it. But things take a tragic turn. It is not the killer who walks into the trap, it is the girl. The mistake leaves John devastated and furious. Then suddenly the killer appears right in front of him. Overcome with rage, John charges forward and attacks him with the machete. On the other side, the boy is completely devastated after seeing his sister die. Morning is approaching, and John still has not found the killer. He keeps shouting, calling out for his second child, but fear continues to build inside him. Suddenly, the killer appears and attacks. In the chaos, someone shows up behind John. Without thinking, he turns and strikes. Only then does he realize it is the boy. In that moment, everything hits him at once: grief, anger, despair, and guilt. John has just killed both of his own children. Lost and broken, he wanders aimlessly, leaving the boy's body behind. Then he hears a sound of a clock alarm somewhere nearby. Drawn by the noise, he searches for it and discovers the clock buried beneath the ground. As he digs, he is shocked to find not only the clock, but also a human hand. There is a man's body buried there, with words carved into it that read, "Return to the beginning." It feels like a message meant specifically for him. Still confused, John goes back to the place where he first woke up. After digging around, he finds a box labeled "Truth," containing 2 syringes. Without hesitation, he injects himself. Moments later, his body reacts violently. He collapses, overwhelmed with pain, vomiting as everything inside him is forced out. After losing consciousness for a while, John wakes up again. But something has changed. His expression is different now. His gaze is sharp, his smile unsettling, and there is no trace of fear left. He walks toward a car hidden under a camouflage of leaves and retrieves the key he had concealed near the front tire. As he prepares to leave, he notices a family photo inside, showing himself with his wife and a young child. It raises a disturbing question about the family he thought he had before. Soon after, he calls his wife and child, checking on them as if nothing has happened. Not long later, he stops his car near another cabin, where a different family is staying: a father, a mother, and their 2 children. John changes out of his bloodstained clothes and approaches the father, who is unloading items from the car. He presents himself as a local resident, casually mentioning that he also has children who could play with theirs. With no suspicion at all, the father introduces him to his family. But without warning, the situation suddenly takes a dark turn, and John takes control of the household.
Don't fucking move! Face that way now!
The truth is finally clear. John is not who he claims to be. Soon after, the mother and both children lose consciousness, while the father is left seriously harmed. John then reviews the family's recordings on their handycam, removing every video that shows the father's face. Chillingly, he records himself as well, calmly presenting the scene as if they are his own family on vacation. Next, he puts on medical clothing, complete with a head cover, mask, and gloves. He brings the mother back to consciousness using a special mixture. Then, with a cold, emotionless expression, he continues recording as the situation takes a disturbing turn. Without a hint of guilt, John calmly continues eating while writing something on a piece of paper. He then places it near the 2 children, along with several objects they will later be forced to confront. The message he leaves behind sets the rules. If they try to leave the forest, their father's life will be at risk. If they try to contact anyone for help, the same consequence will follow. But if they want him to survive, they must follow John's instructions. Their father is hidden somewhere, and the only way to reach him lies within a secret John refuses to reveal directly. After that, John takes the father away and leaves behind a message that reads, "Return to the beginning," echoing what was seen earlier. He then hides the location, setting up a time signal that will activate the next morning. From there, he parks his car again and carefully covers it with leaves to keep it out of sight. He casually calls his real wife, telling her he cannot come home that day due to sudden work. Next, John prepares a setup for himself. Using a tarp and loose soil, he arranges a mechanism designed to conceal him automatically. Then he injects himself with a substance similar to the one from before. This time, he seems to be setting the stage for something even more intense. And as the story comes to an end, John slowly gets buried beneath the ground, a faint smile forming on his face, already anticipating the next round of his twisted game. In the end, everything becomes clear. This entire nightmare is nothing more than a game he created for himself. A psychopath chasing the thrill of fear, pain, and survival, pushing his own adrenaline to the limit. The killer he keeps running from is not truly someone else, but a role shaped by his own mind to make the hunt feel real, more exciting, more terrifying. For John, it is never about escape. It is about the experience. And once it ends, he resets everything, just to feel it all over again. So the moral of the story is if you ever wake up buried alive, maybe don't trust yourself because you might be the problem and also your own final boss.